I had to intro the show that way. The Northeastern band and student section singing their interestingly joyful and kind of random anthem of Stacy's Mom was the only way to introduce the Beanpot Championship episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Puck University. I'm Chris Lynch. Josh Kummins is on. He is joining us for the wrap-up and to steer towards future editions and towards the rest of the season, which we're getting right into the thick of things, so we'll talk with him. Josh, thanks for hopping on for another round, and I hope we're able to have you on for more than just Beanpot stuff.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and it is pretty appropriate that you open with that, because I believe that the origins of the Stacy's Mom tradition were at the Beanpot 3 or 4 years ago, maybe now.
Something like that. I've heard Tim, when he was still with us, had a story about it's up for dispute exactly who made that a thing, but that's basically a thing that they started doing like 4 or 5 years ago. There's videos of the band performing that song outside Fenway for stuff. Oh. Yeah, there's from 2016, so within fairly recent. It's become a fixture within the Northeastern pep band's repertoire. And let me get one bit of like a little bit of sap out of the way first. Congratulations to Northeastern University for claiming their second consecutive Beanpot in beating Boston College in that game. But I couldn't help but take a look back at that game, even as it was winding down, and watching the Northeastern students going crazy. I couldn't help but just have that little bit in my head think, I still wish Tim were here so that he could experience this properly. He got to see his school win one Beanpot, and it was among the best feelings he ever had as a fan of his team. But man, I wish you were still around so he could have experienced a bit more of it. So, Tim, buddy, your team's a winner again, and I still just wish you were here to experience that with us. But that's the sap that I need, and the sentiment I need to express. And let's actually talk about hockey stuff going down, and let's conveniently skip over that abomination of a consolation game that was played beforehand, which is my way of saying I want that game to not exist, but I'm going to have to acknowledge it because what the actual hell was that?
Yeah, it wasn't good. It turned out at the end, it turned out to be a little bit more of a game than it started out as. But I know we talk a lot about. We have talked a lot about just how the beginning of that game can obviously, and the attendance, I don't really remember it being that low in the past. It's obviously it's an empty building for the most part, to put it lightly. But yeah, and I guess there's nothing you can do about it because it's 4:30 on a Monday afternoon, so most people aren't out of work yet. But yeah, it just there was no other way to put it than to say that BU kind of lacked energy at the beginning of that game. They got outshot. It wasn't as bad by the end because they kind of turned it on in the third period. As it turned out, that's when they scored both of their goals. But other than that, it was almost complete domination, I guess you would say. And it stings a little because really the main reason for that is because BU almost has nothing to play for as far as the NCAA tournament at this point. So the game was relatively meaningless. So you just like for the Beanpot, and especially for BU, where that was their kind of the crown jewel of the regular season for them, won it more than half of the time, or just about half of the time, 67 years now. So right around there, definitely would have expected a little bit more out of them as far as the way that they played. Obviously, still didn't have Bobo Carpenter in the lineup, and not sure how long that's going to last. I know originally he was supposed to be back pretty soon here in this home stretch, but yeah, there was no energy on that bench, and Harvard certainly played better, and they took advantage of the fact that their opponent just didn't really seem ready to play. And I guess as it turns out, and I know Ted Donato talked about this at the post-game press conference actually over the weekend before, but it certainly comes through again because Adam Fox scored his 100th career point. Any power play and really any team with that number 18 on it is going to be pretty darn good. So you certainly saw him out there, and but yeah, I just would have expected a little bit more out of the BU effort, that's for sure.
Yeah, I looked at that as a BU alum thinking there's a skeleton band here for the early game, the Beanpot Championship game, and I can't even begin to express how depressed I am by watching this. I kind of live tweeted the game, but half-heartedly because my school didn't really show up, and I've never seen Albie so depressed as he was in the post game, where he just looked like he had been defeated, and that's one of the saddest sights I think I've seen out of any coaching display, in my honest estimation, was just knowing that. And he said his team was more competitive in practice the day prior, which is very strange, but yeah, they didn't really have anything to compete for in the pairwise rankings. They are currently at 27th, and unless they win out in the Hockey East tournament, which is completely possible, by the way, with Ottinger in net, they gave Vinny Perpera the start in this game. Right. It was his second career start, and to his credit, I think he did pretty well. I think that he'll be on the roster. He'll be a part of the team moving forward. I wouldn't be surprised if Ottinger ends up departing, particularly I think the Stars will make a pretty big push to sign him in the offseason. Right. And I just think that he's given almost everything he possibly can to the program, to the school. He's done a lot of winning, but I wouldn't be surprised to see his career wrap up. And you're right about Foxy from the Harvard side. He is if Cale Makar hadn't have been as on fire as he was throughout the first stretch of the season and as consistent as he's remained. And also, if Harvard would play more games, like if the Ivy League schedule allowed for more games to be played, how many points would Adam Fox have? He'd win.
It's crazy.
He'd win the Hobie. He would win the Hobie outright if Harvard would play more games. He's currently tied for 17th. Other people in that place, Ryan Kuffner, who is a forward, but also goes to an Ivy League school, but is a forward. He's tied with Patrick Newell in points, and he's tied with Johnny Walker in points. Yeah, the nation's leading goal scorer, who doesn't assist a lot. He has 22 goals and 10 assists. Fox, meanwhile, 8 goals. The most recent one was an empty netter, and 24 assists. He's got to be going off to the pros after all of this, right?
Yeah, it's just obviously you could see his talent, and I know we've talked about this with probably Adam Gaudette in the past couple of weeks, and Johnny Gaudreau, guys like that have played in the Beanpot. Obviously, Jack Eichel was 1 year, so it's a little bit of a different comparison. But what he's been able to do really from day one is incredible. Obviously, both of them, you could see their talent as well, but what he's been able to do and the way that he's been able to rack up those points as a defenseman. Obviously, none of those other guys that I just mentioned were defensemen, but I don't have the note in front of me, but it's the first time in like 5-6 years that a defenseman as a junior reached 100 career points. So he's putting up numbers in ways that most forwards don't. So it's pretty remarkable what he's been able to do, and just how confident he is on that power play and able to trying to bring a team along that has had so many freshmen play key roles this year too. And they're looking, they play the way that they played in that game and have been playing lately, because you could argue that entering the Beanpot here, that they were probably the hardest team because the way that they've been playing in ECAC entering the first weekend. Obviously, 1-goal game in the first round that they lost, but really able to take control of that game against BU, a team that they got a quote-unquote point against earlier in the season as well. But yeah, he has just been unbelievable this year, and the growth that he's made as far as those numbers. You could always see the talent, but but definitely definitely a special guy. And I think, like you said, we're probably seeing the last of him in a crimson uniform this year. Remarkable.
Yeah, he's been incredible. And Harvard currently 13th in the pairwise. That's close to the bubble, but if they have a good run down the stretch here in ECAC play, I think they'll position themselves to be pretty close to secure going into the ECAC tournament. Currently in the standings, the ECAC standings, they are tied with Clarkson in points. They would get the 4th seed because of the there's more wins in the Clarkson column. So,
right.
And every ECAC team has played 16 games. That schedule is even the rest of the way. There is another head-to-head game between Harvard and Clarkson that is actually this upcoming weekend at 7 p.m. in Potsdam, when Harvard, first off, they need to beat St. Lawrence because that is a god-awful loss if they end up falling to the Saints. And they need to beat Clarkson for the head-to-head matchup, but even if they escape with just a tie out of it, that'll be acceptable at least. So we're transitioning to the point where every single game is critical because there's not a lot of games left for a Crimson team that started off really rocky, but they look good. They look like they're positioned to take a run at the tournament again and maybe make it back to Lake Placid for what would be a 5th consecutive year of them being in the ECAC's Final Four.
Right, yeah. And the thing, too, that stands out to me is usually, obviously, these 4 teams are at this point in the year, for the most part, and definitely in the past when we were kind of talking about the Beanpot as a 2-team tournament. Those 2 teams, BC and BU, obviously were always in that conversation. And the thing that you're seeing this year is Harvard is close to that mark. And I was at the game against Union that they played before this week of the Beanpot, and they talked about that, like right up front, that they needed to come into this game and take care of business because they needed to win it for the pairwise. And obviously it is a little bit of a bubble position right now, but they have the right mindset because they are certainly playing enough teams that are competitive going through the rest of the season if they're able to kind of take care of their own business. And obviously, if you win the conference tournament, you don't have to worry about the pairwise. But if you take care of your own business, really not worry about anyone else, obviously, to some extent, you do have to worry. But certainly they're putting themselves in the right position to be there. They're right in the bubble right now, and they know that they have the right mindset going into this point in the season, that they're playing well, and they have to play well, and they have to produce results because they need these wins. Because, like you said, the beginning of the season was a little rocky, kind of up and down. But right now they are playing some pretty good hockey, and their defense has been unbelievable. There's been, I think you can probably count them on one hand, the number of games this year that they've allowed more than 2 goals. It's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, it is. It's quite a feat where this past stretch for Michael Lackey, where he has looked really, really comfortable in net. The last couple months of the season, they'll be a hard out in the ECAC tournament, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them playing on regional weekend. I don't know where exactly they would get placed if they would be forced to go out west because there just isn't room east to put them anywhere, or if they get sent to the Midwest for the quote unquote Midwest Regional in Allentown, Pennsylvania. Which, look, I know that there isn't another way to title it, but that implies that we don't know our geography. Title it the Mid-Atlantic Regional if we have to put it in Allentown. That's at least, a lot more geographically accurate than the middle of the West in Pennsylvania. That just, guys, we need to know our geography. I'll touch on Boston University for one line. Sweet merciful Jesus. The Terriers are 7th place in Hockey East right now. I don't see a way for them with 18 points. They're one back of both Northeastern and New Hampshire, which is very, very surprising to see Northeastern only there. But 17 games each played for Northeastern and BU. And BU's overall record, 10-14-3. I cannot even begin to tell you how much this hurts me as a Boston University person. I don't see a way. They'll make the playoffs if they just keep on the pace that they're on right now, but they'll be a road team in round one. And let's just move on to the championship game because this is just hurting. You can hear, this is hurting me. Go talk to our friend Marissa and Jemmy about how that Monday was. God, it was terrible. Contrast that with Boston University's women's team winning in overtime for the Beanpot women's final at Bright Landry and Harvard last night. We're recording this on Wednesday, so on last night, Tuesday night, the BU women won their first Beanpot since 1981, and that game totally happened. This consolation game did not totally happen. So, before you get an opportunity to rub salt in my wound of being a BU person, Josh, I'm not going to give you that chance. Let's just talk about the Beanpot final, which I thought was really a superb hockey game between mostly, I thought, evenly matched teams. Despite the records, this tournament has a very odd way of evening the whole playing field out between all the participants.
Yeah, it turned out to be a good hockey game. It honestly, at the beginning, even though the shots were kind of were pretty even, it seemed like obviously the score at the beginning of the third period was 3-0, and it there was a point that it didn't feel that way on the scoreboard. Anyways, for most of the way, it did feel like it was closer than in the second period, as it turned out to be 2-0. But a lot of the way, it seemed like BC had more of the quality opportunities than Northeastern did, but they were just they're opportunistic, which is something that we've talked about them all season long, really being obviously where last year can kind of talk about them as a one-line team for the most part, and with Sakura, Gaudette, and Nolan Stevens, but they've really been a team this year that's can roll four lines, and you saw it with some of the guys who were able to make plays in the Beanpot. And I know Coach Madigan talked about how proud he was of his senior class for stepping up on such a big stage. But yeah, they were. It was a very good hockey game by the end, because BC, after Northeastern scored that third goal, you kind of see them turn it on, and obviously they outshot BC close to double, and outshot Northeastern close to double in that third period, and when they pulled Joe Wall, who had an incredible game, as he so often does this year. There were times where it looked like that could be a tie hockey game, and I know there's a picture going around on Twitter this week of a save that Caden Primo made with the paddle of his stick. I can't remember exactly when in the game that came, but there were a ton of great Boston College opportunities, and I think it really made for a fun game too, because they haven't played each other yet this year, which is a pretty rare thing. And actually, the last time that happened, looking through the game notes, actually after the game, I caught this one. Was the 1980 championship when Northeastern won its first Beanpot, and obviously able to pull it out in the end, get an empty net goal, and make it 6 all time. But obviously 2 in a row is something they've never done.
They had done it one time.
They had done it once before.
Yeah.
Obviously, but something they haven't done in a very long time.
Yeah.
And it was just obviously a fun hockey game, and I know, like you mentioned with Stacy's mom at the beginning, a fun hockey game, and certainly a majority of the Garden crowd was happy about that, because of how impressive the kind of that Northeastern crowd was. So so it was a lot of fun, especially given that aspect, because there was such energy in the building after, like we were talking about, a pretty lackluster first game for the overall perspective. Obviously Harvard played very well, but as far as the competitive hockey game that we were kind of hoping for, with again two teams that played a really good hockey game earlier in the season and tied, that one kind of, like you said, erased the memory.
Yeah. So that photo, the 1980 Beanpot, the Wayne Turner one, where he scored the overtime winner, was the last time that those teams hadn't played each other before the Beanpot, and the Beanpot was their first game that they had faced off against each other. The shots ended up being 35 apiece on net, I should say. Woll made 31 saves, and some of those were incredible. Primo made made 13 of his saves in that third period. And the one you're thinking of him getting the paddle down on Julius Matila, or Matila, however you end up pronouncing it, was with about 4 minutes and change left to go. It was a play that bounced off the end boards, bounced right to Matila, and he didn't get everything he wanted on that shot, but with the net wide open, you don't need that much. But Primo made an amazing play to get back across. It was somewhat reminiscent of the Braden Holtby save in the Stanley Cup final, I thought, where, of course, he didn't cover it, but he got a paddle on it, and he got across on a previously wide open net. And I felt like at that point, you were pretty certain that Northeastern was going to win this thing, because I did have a feeling that either once the third goal went in for Northeastern, it was a Lincoln Griffin backhander on a play where Woll played a great game, but he was so far out of position on that goal. It was a nice backhander, went just under the bar, but Woll was not in good position on that play. So, and that came a minute and 25 in. That BC bench has a lot of pride and a lot of talent. I mean, David Cotton, I believe he's first in Hockey East for goal scoring, if I've got that detail right. He's got 16 goals. Yeah, he's got the most goals of any Hockey East player, and he's sixth nationally. He got his 16th, also threw in an assist for good measure on the J.D. Dudek goal. That BC bench has a lot of pride, and especially Coach York, who signed a 3-year extension going through the 2020 to the 2021-22 season. He deserves it, I think. If there's any coach who has earned the right to go out on his terms and to retire when he feels like he's done, it is Jerry York. So, but yeah, fun hockey game and a phenomenal performance by Northeastern. I actually originally made my vote for MVP Patrick Schul because he had 2 goals throughout the week of the tournament. But I thought Primo ultimately was also a deserving and a very fair candidate. The first goalie to get both the Everly Award and the Beanpot MVP since Sean McGuire of the 2016 Beanpot, who was, even though BU lost that tournament, he was by every possible metric the best player on the ice, and really the biggest reason why that BU team, which I remember that team, that was my senior year of college. That was a good team that was living off a little bit of championship hangover from the year prior, and it was only a good team that had some real talent. Like, that was McAvoy and Greenway and Grizzlick were all on that team together, and they just didn't figure it out. McGuire was the saving grace of that team that lifted them to wins. But Primo deserved it. Primo absolutely deserved that win. I think it was a .952, something like that, save percentage over the 2 games. So, yeah, congratulations to Northeastern. And I got to ask, I mentioned this already, Coach York getting the extension. I've told you my thoughts on it. I don't think I got to run this by you. I think maybe, at dinner of the Beanpot tournament, right before we went up for the consolation game, I asked you about it. And just refresh my memory. What do you think of the extension? Because there's a little bit of disagreement going on in Boston College circles, from what I know.
Yeah, there is, and obviously you can see it because they're obviously not playing to the level that. A lot of this has to do with him as well. He's just set the bar so high with the way that they've been able to play over the last 15, 20 years, because there was a run, and I know he's talked about this with the Beanpot specifically as well, where they'd won 8 of the last 12 or something like that Beanpots in a row, which is incredible because it was dominated by BU for so long, and it's such a hard tournament to win because of how high quality the 4 teams are. But it's really remarkable that what they're able to do, because you can definitely, when you think of the best programs in college hockey, they're one of them because of what he's been able to do over the course of now it's 25 years, I think, is his tenure at BC. Obviously, even longer than that is as a head coach in total. But yeah, I get the disagreement, but like you said, it's certainly I don't think I expected it to go that long, because I believe he's going to be 75 years old by the time that this new extension expires. But like you said, I think if there's any coach who does deserve to go out on his own terms, it is him. But I didn't expect it, to be honest. I thought that the end might be coming a little sooner than maybe some people were thinking. But I definitely I didn't think it was going to be as long if it was going to happen. Maybe 2 more years. But certainly, like you said, if there is a coach who deserves to go out on his own terms, it would be him. And I think a lot of that disagreement has to do with just how high the bar he set over such a long period of time now. So definitely understand the disagreement, but certainly he's the greatest coach in the history of the sport, and certainly can't argue with what he's done, because it is remarkable, and he's just someone that any player who's ever played at Boston College has nothing but glowing things to say about. So I certainly get it, and certainly can see where the disagreement is coming from, and I'm a little surprised by it to the extent of just those on the surface details and to some extent the way that they've been playing, but certainly there's no way to fault what he's done over the course of his total career, because it's remarkable. In building, when he came, it was a very bad program, and he turned it around so fast, and obviously into one of the powerhouse programs of the last 20 years. So
yeah.
So it's interesting, but I get it.
So a brief rundown, if I can be allowed to. I'm going to do one of the hardest things a Boston University person can ever do. Praise something about Boston College. Jerry York is full class. He is the greatest college hockey coach ever. He's been doing this for a long time. He played at Boston College from 1963 to 1967. He was an assistant coach for a little bit. His first job as a head coach in college hockey was in 1972 at Clarkson. And he was a head coach in the ECAC at a time when BU and Cornell were the dominant forces in the conference. And BU especially went to so many Frozen Fours. I think they went to 7 of the Frozen Fours that were played in the 1970s and were the dominant power. And Clarkson gave them a lot of competition, and that rivalry with them started right there for York. He moved on to he never reached an NCAA tournament in his tenure at Clarkson. He coached from 72 to 79. 79, he went over to Bowling Green. He coached the second ever Hobey Baker winner, George McPhee. Yeah, that one, who was the general manager of the Vegas Golden Knights, who didn't really make it that great as a player in the NHL, but he's coached great hockey minds dating back to the 70s and the 80s. He led them to the national championship in 1984, which was a quadruple overtime game, which I believe still is the longest college hockey game that has ever been played. He consistently led them to winning records, even through his last 2 seasons in 93 and 94. He became the head coach of the Eagles in 94-95, and his first year, they were bad. They were 11-22-2, 8-14-2 in Hockey East play, and that was a dormant program at that point in time. They had made the Frozen Four in 1990, had lost to the champion Wisconsin Badgers that season, and had David Emma on that team as a Hobey Baker winner that year. But after that year, for half of that decade, Boston College was a dead program. And York revived it to the point where, here's the run that they went on from 1998 until 2016. They went to 5 national championships. They went to the are you ready for this? Regular season titles 9 times. Hockey East tournament titles 9 times. Beanpot titles 9 times. 12 times in the NCAA tournament. I think like 7 or 8 times going to the Frozen Four, and 4 times winning the national championship. He's the winningest coach in the history of college hockey. It's not that close. And they've finished each of the last 3 seasons. They finished tied for first in Hockey East in 2016 and went to the Frozen Four. They finished tied for first place in 2017, and they won the conference outright last season in the regular season. It was a weaker team outside of conference, but still, in conference play, first place teams. So I get the confusion, and I get why it's been so long. The 2022 season, York currently is 73 years old. So he will be, in 3 years' time, he will be, and by the way, he turned 74 in July, so he will be 76 going on 77 at the time of this contract's expiration. So yeah, it's a long contract, and it would be his 46th season of coaching in the 2020 season, and on that, if he plays out to the remainder of his contract, which he is a man of his word, and I think he will, that will be 48 years being a head coach, 28 years being a head coach at Boston College. You don't send him out. You don't force him out. If he wants to continue coaching and he still has something, and I think he still does have something, you bring him back, and he is your coach. Puck University will continue after a brief word.
Life is about making decisions. At BMW I, we decided it was time to reinvent the car from the ground up, making sure we were open for truly innovative ideas. We decided that the car we wanted must be electric, and it should be made of extremely light and super strong carbon fiber. And finally, we decided to make it more intelligent and added our promise of incomparable driving pleasure. We made all these decisions to offer you a choice. The all-electric BMW i3.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's been rough because he's set the bar, and keep using that phrase, but it really is, like you said, it was a very bad program at the time that he took it over, and it was just such a remarkable transformation that he's been able to do. But I really do get the kind of the torn part of it, because it's not what they expect. So he certainly has the positivity and the positive energy that you're looking for, and the kind of especially with the way that things have been going now, to kind of try to take the positives out of even the losses and kind of know what to build off of. But really it's tough, I think, because it's just you've these fans that are feeling that kind of negative side to it. It's challenging because he's been doing it for so long, and you kind of want to see him go out with the best. And I think it was especially a lot of people thought that next year might be the end too, because there was a chance with obviously I think they have Spencer Knight coming in as a goaltender from the development program, who in the case that we're talking about, Joe Wall going to the pros will kind of take over and be in that spot, because he's obviously thought of so highly coming from that program. Thought that next year might be the year if they're able to kind of put everything together and get the team that they want. So it's challenging because he's been doing it for so long, and he has had such success, and you see how long this run of not making it to the tournament is a little bit extended now. So it's challenging, and I certainly get that there is no one more deserving of going out on their own terms, but I do see the side where the bar had where the bar that he's set is so up there that it's just making it harder and harder to even reach to the expectations that people have established. And this year's a little bit challenging too because of just that non-conference streak, again extending so far as to last week. So it's tough, but I certainly see both sides of this one, and can agree with both sides in this one because there are certainly key points, and we kind of touched on the age factor as well, which was the part that surprised me the most, even more so than the fact that the bar over the last couple of years has been that they haven't been able to reach that bar over the last couple of years. So it's tough.
Yeah, but almost no one can. But almost no one can reach that.
Right, exactly.
Their expectation every single year is to win the national championship. There are a few programs where your standard every year, Denver, North Dakota, BU, BC, those kind of programs, you're supposed to win the national championship every single year because you've proven that you can be competitive and you can have great teams. And when you just have good teams, that's a big step down. And I should note about the remaining schedule for the Boston College Eagles. It is well, they have a home with UMass Amherst, which will be fun. They get to go to Arno to close out the month, which is always fun. They have one home game in March, which they host Northeastern, and then they get to go to Northeastern on March 2nd, and then they get to travel to Providence, who is currently sitting on the outside of the bubble, but I think that might just make them more motivated to play. They're currently 17th in the pairwise, and I'm not sure about it, but I believe Providence will want to be in the national tournament this season. Call me crazy for having that assumption, but, just want to have all my bases covered. So that schedule, it'll be a great opportunity for York to allay some fears, but that is a brutal schedule. That's 7 games. Only 2 of them are at home. One of them is to Northeastern, who just beat you in the Beanpot, and the other one is against the league's first-place team in UMass. So that's an unbelievably brutal schedule that BC has to try and work their way through in the remaining weeks of the regular season. And there are not many weeks remaining in the regular season here.
No. Yeah, it's crunch time now, that's for sure. And as far as BC, yeah, you're right. It's always that UMass team outside of that game in Lowell on Saturday night that they lost 2-0. It's obviously a team that's they're right up there as far as the top teams in the country. They've proven it. They're the first place team in what most people consider annually anyways. It's obviously a debate for that we don't have to have, but the historically thought of it as the best conference in the country with where the national powers are coming from, but they're right up there at the top above them all. So yeah, that series should be fun this weekend, and it's going to tell a lot about both teams because UMass right now, they're only 2 points from being caught in that first place spot, which a couple weeks ago seemed almost unheard of, but they lost their 2 games this year to the team that's right up behind them now, UMass Lowell. And and looking back at that BC schedule, going to Maine's never easy, and obviously Northeastern just beat you in the Beanpot, like you said, and Providence is a team that actually I guess you can say they're a tough team, but that's maybe the team this year that BC's had the most success against because they're that non-conference stretch ended kind of around 2 wins against Providence, which or finished and was completed and then finally broken around 2 wins against Providence. But it's certainly going to be a challenge for them. They're not as good of a team as they again have not as they've been in previous years, like we're talking about with Coach York, and it's going to take a lot for them to kind of get into this thing if they are going to want to win that Hockey East championship, because they're going to have to play some awfully good teams down the stretch to kind of get to the level that they want. And like you said, with that non-conference streak lasting so long, the fact that they're in this position in Hockey East is pretty remarkable, and needing to win the needing to win the tournament at this point to get in. So it's interesting where they stand right now because they are so close to that Hockey East regular season championship, but they're certainly not a favorite at this point because to go into the Garden at least and have the success that they want because they just put themselves in such an inconsistent place because of how that non-conference schedule is finished.
Yeah,
so it'll be interesting to see. I'm interested in that series this weekend because they've played overall pretty well in Hockey East, but they have some work to do if they want to get to those ultimate goals that they obviously have the talent to do, like we were talking about earlier.
Yeah, my friend Jason Scales of Inside Hockey will be going to both ends of that series, so we'll have IHIs on that series. I imagine that both ends will be pretty well attended in the press box. I would really like to see Conti get some bigger crowds on the Saturday game, which will be an 8:00 puck drop. The Friday night game at Mullins should be sold out. I just kind of expect that building to be sold out. Particularly, it's still thought of as a traditional power. And I'm sure there are some casual hockey fans who will just look at the name Boston College and think, oh yeah, they're pretty good as always. So they're going to want to see the UMass team who's been shockingly great to play the consistently good program. At least that's what I hope ends up happening for them. Switching gears for the Northeastern schedule, I am kind of surprised to see them as tight against the bubble as they are right now. They're in the 14th spot in the pairwise at 17-9-1, 9-7-1 in Hockey East. They got up for the Beanpot, and they had better not let up for the remainder of the season because they have 7 games. They start with a home series against the Vermont Catamounts in which they get Stefanos Lekas coming into their building, who is highly capable of stealing games. Then they get a road trip to New Hampshire for 2 games, which, have fun with that, boys. They get the home and home against BC, and then they finish off against New Hampshire. So 3 games against the Wildcats, who they're a fun team. I really, really like what Mike Souza has going on in Durham, and it's Northeastern's fortune. Take that word however you want it. That they get to play a team that I think can be correctly counted as on the rise, back up to where they were when they were in contention atop the Hockey East standings and winning some tournament championships in the prime of the Dick Umili years, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been fun to watch them this year because they were at the beginning of the season. They were right around 500, but they were well below 500 for time and caught up with a nice winning streak kind of around that Christmas time. But they're pretty young, and they're still obviously through a first-year coach who was obviously with the program for a couple years before he took the position. But they've really grown throughout the course of the season. There were a lot of close games. They have a ton of ties on their record. It's almost as many ties as anything else, and they were even. I think their record was. I don't remember the point actually. Got it right here. Yeah, they were 8-8-8 at a time in the season. Climbed a little bit above 500 now with a few wins over the last couple weeks. But yeah, splitting their last 2 weekends, obviously going to Vermont, just like going to Maine, is never an easy game. And they split their rivalry series again with Maine, who they played 3 pretty good games with. But yeah, and I know we've talked about. Can't remember on the show or just talking at games how battle tested they're going to be by the end of the season because of how many overtime games they've been in. Yeah. It's really impressive, and I know we always use the kind of the line that coaches like to use that there are no freshmen at this time of the year, and that really benefits them too because they were playing with a lot of young players, still are playing with a lot of young players, but again, they've gotten so much experience in close games that they're going to be playing at the end of the season, where they're right in that middle of the pack now, and it's really, like you said, they've snuck up on a lot of people because of really how well they've played since right around, actually a little before Christmas time, but certainly since Christmas, getting some of these results to climb up around some of these other Hockey East teams.
I'll agree with that. It's a really fun unit to watch. I thought they'd be really good last year, and I was right in the early part of the season. I was very wrong at the end of it, and it was sad to watch New Hampshire underperform so badly last season because I really thought that they had some pieces to make a run in the Hockey East tournament to send out Coach Umile the right way, and they sent him out in the most painful way. A loss to Yale, which, wow, I got that wrong badly. A loss to Maine, which is even worse. So if you were a Harvard person, losing to Yale would be the worst way to go about it. But losing to Maine for a New Hampshire person, yeah, that's a pretty painful way to go out. But I really, really liked what Coach Sousa's been doing. He's still, it feels like, almost carries himself as a player, and I wonder how well his players can relate to him on those grounds because he's pretty young. He's still in really good shape. He's got a lot of energy. He loves his program, and he understands the weight of playing for a program with a lot of pride. That's a successful program that New Hampshire has going. It's just a shame that there's an easy trash-talking point of calling it the University of No Hardware. I'm sorry, New Hampshire fans. Don't boycott me for pointing that out. But they've played more Hockey East games than anyone at this point. At 19, they're at 7-5. They're the least likely to climb up the standings just because of the number of games that they've played.
Right.
Providence has played 18. Maine has played 18. BU, Northeastern, BC, Lowell, and UMass have all played 17 each. So those schools are all really able to climb up the ladder a little bit more, are able to affect their destiny a little bit more. New Hampshire, it might be a case of too little too late, but they're going to have to go on the road someplace. But with only one playoff round in Hockey East play this season, with the knockdown to 8 total playoff teams, I very well may have New Hampshire as an upset team to end up making it to the Garden for another round of Hockey East tournament play. So
no, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. They've played really well of late, and I know in years past they've been able to kind of steal these playoff games, especially with Danny Tironi over the last couple of years in the net, who's just played. I know there were a couple of years in a row that they played Merrimack, and he had in both years, both playoff series. Actually, two of us might have been at least one of those together, but just made an incredible amount of 50-something saves in multiple games. And it's just he's a guy who can do that. And I think they have a guy now, obviously a little bit of a different style, just because of kind of their body type and everything, is Mike Robinson. But he's played really well of late himself. And obviously you need hot goaltending at the end of the season. And they have guys who can put the puck in the net. They, like you said, that big ice, you kind of see their talent shine through as well. I think they're a very fun team to watch, and they are right there in the middle of the standings. It's really it's where you want to be at this point, really fighting for it, even though, like you said, their games are numbered, but they have an opportunity to climb up really into a top spot because of the teams that they are going to be playing. Well, again, 3 times is the team they're tied with right now. So you need to take care of business in these games. Obviously, 3 games in a short amount of time is impossible to. Yeah, not impossible, but it's really hard to win them all. But you have to perform well, and it's really the most important thing is to put yourself in the position to play well at the right time, because I'm pretty confident at this point that we all know who the 8 playoff teams are going to be, because there's a 5-point gap at this point between the top 8 and the bottom 3. It's been pretty clear this year, so there's not really a race for that. But the rest of it is really up in the air, and I think, like you said, they're going to be a fun team to watch because they are playing some of their best hockey of the season at this right time of the year, or at least playing the way that they want to play, regardless of the results.
The games that I'll be going to, I'll be at both ends of the UMass Lowell versus Providence series. That's one where they're jockeying for position atop the conference. That's one where they're fighting for positioning in in the pairwise rankings. So that's the series I'm going to be going to. There's a couple of other series throughout the country that I am really, really going to keep my eye on and going to see what ends up happening. The Harvard-Clarkson game on Saturday night at Shield is one that I think we should all be paying some real attention to, because that is a crazy, crazy game and a really important game for ECAC standings purposes. There's two series going on in the NCHC that we should pay attention to. Well, they're the only two series going on in the NCHC, and for all of our talk about Hockey East, the best conference over the last couple of years has been the NCHC, and they've got some teams that can make another run in it. Western Michigan is a little bit of a surprising one. They are hosting the Fighting Hawks of North Dakota on Friday and Saturday, and then the headliner, the big game, Denver, Duluth, playing at the AmSoil Arena on Friday and Saturday. 7:07 puck drop both nights, because those are television games. Methinks that those might be nationally the games with the biggest implications, all things considered. I know we're Eastern guys, but there's a great big 60-team field in college hockey.
That's right. Yeah, no, I still think, and talking to our friend Jocko from Herald, I know was asked this question by a couple people over the can't remember during the Beanpot. I remember sitting near him and someone coming up to greet him and talking about this. I still think that the best team that the two of us have at least seen this year is St. Cloud State. Just the way that they were able to come out and again talk about BC. Again, this was the point in the season where they hadn't won a game yet, and that they just got destroyed in their own building. And it's funny that their one loss of the season came for a very long time came to Northeastern a couple nights later. But obviously they're so talented and they're so deep, and just the number of NHL future guys that they have, and doing it under a first-year coach too, which was talked a lot about, is pretty outstanding. So definitely right in saying that it seems like that's been the best in the country. But like you said, it's been there's been a lot of surprises this year. I know if you'll kind of look at Atlantic hockey a little bit. Obviously, we've been talking for a while here, so you don't have to go into it all right now. But obviously, they have some really hot teams at this point in the year, and that's a league that obviously generally only gets one team in the NCAA tournament in a year, with just kind of the strength of schedule that they play is hurt by that. But it's certainly it's going to be a fun down the stretch, because especially for us out here, and you're talking about the regionals and where teams are going to go. Doesn't seem like there's going to be a whole ton of teams out here. So there's realistic possibility that almost every team from our region, from New England, is going to be, or at least the three Eastern conferences, is going to get to stay out here because of where they are. Two of them are obviously in New England, around here, but they're just looks like going to be so few teams this year that you could be seeing a lot of that home ice advantage, as long as there's obviously no conference conflicts, because you can't have that in the first round of the tournament. So that adds a little bit of a wrinkle, but it's going to be fun to see that this year, because there's the opportunity for not only to have that kind of stay-at-home feel, but for some teams that aren't usually out here to come out here, and vice versa. Yeah,
St. Cloud, pencil them in. They're going to the Fargo Regional. Just pencil them in. They're going there. Yeah. UMass, you've got two places where you can put them, and realistically, either one, assuming that they stay on the pace that they're on right now, I think you could absolutely put them as the one seed in either the Manchester Regional or the Providence Regional. And my guess is, I think Manchester's a little bit closer to Amherst than Providence is, I think. But either one, just flip a coin between the two of them. I mean, obviously, if it were in Worcester, if it were last year's regional setup, then obviously you put UMass in Worcester. Ohio State is the third seed right now in the pairwise. I think you put them in Allentown. If it were actually Midwest, then, it would be a little bit different, but we do what we can with it. And then currently Duluth is the 4th seed. Quinnipiac is not that far behind them. And I do think it's possible for those two to flip, particularly if Quinnipiac at least makes it to the ECAC championship, and if Duluth gets knocked out early in the NCHC tournament, or at least gets knocked out before the conference championship game. I think that's certainly possible that you could see those two flip and see Quinnipiac be the 1 seed, where you'd probably flex them into the Providence Regional as the number 1 seed down there and send UMass to Manchester. Does that sound reasonable? I think that lineup would make sense. At least I'm only going to try this for the 1 seeds. I'm not going to try this for every other for every other seed. And I'll spend just a little bit of time talking about one other notch on the schedule, which is really, really interesting to me, which is the continued, really, I think, surprising performance that's being put on by the Yellow Jackets of American International College. When we did our preview here on this show, and we spoke about Atlantic hockey, we pretty much just talked about Air Force. Just not even going to attempt to cover that up. We only really talked about one team. I didn't even pay AIC that much attention. And I'm sorry, Yellow Jackets fans. I'm sorry, good people of Springfield. You have a very fun team at a... It's interesting. That school is a 1,700 person enrollment, and they have a first place team in. We do have a tendency of bad mouthing Atlantic hockey, but that's good hockey that they play over there. That's fun hockey, and the people there are a lot of fun. AIC put up 6 goals on Niagara. They put up a 3-0 game at Army, a 5-2 game at Army, and against Air Force, 5-0 and 4-0 AIC victories. So it is a team that can contend, and they get one of the most interesting series and possibly one of the most impactful series in the calendar so far in Arizona against the Sun Devils from ASU. I don't know what to make out of that series, to tell you the truth. I think that, because I think those games matter a lot more to ASU than they do to AIC. For the Yellow Jackets, it's an opportunity for them to prove themselves. For Arizona State, if they lose one of those games, that hurts their pairwise rankings in an enormous way, and they don't have a conference tournament opportunity to make up that lost ground. So I think that they're going to have to play with that kind of desperation if they want to be in the tournament.
Right, yeah. First on ASC, I've always seen them a couple of times over the last couple of years. They've really been, I've been impressed with the coach Eric Lang, just what he's been able to do with nothing in such a short amount of time. Obviously, they just moved a couple years ago into the AHL building in downtown, the Mass Mutual Center. But yeah, they've been impressive, and they've played some Hockey East teams and given them a challenge over the last couple of years. It can be hard to compete with what they have, but they've done a really nice job going into that building. Definitely helps. Their old arena, and you can say the same thing almost. Obviously on a different scale because Bentley has an on-campus arena, but the same kind of strides you've seen this year with and in their case, this is their first full season in the new building. They only played a couple games in the old place last year. But both of their old rinks were town-owned, operated, almost youth hockey. Well, not almost. They were youth hockey rinks, high school hockey rinks, town-owned and operated type deals. I know for sure in Watertown where Bentley played, and definitely it was a high school rink. I'm not sure the operating or anything like that as far as the place that AIC was, but it was a town. It was a youth rink that kids were playing in right before, and it's such a remarkable transformation for those two programs, really. But specifically at AIC, obviously a first place team, and they've done it with going. They're getting guys all over, and the name of the school is is pretty appropriate with so many international players on that team, because of that's just where the guys, they just want to come play college hockey. They don't really, I guess the best way to put it is they don't really know where, they don't really know the extent. I guess you know about Hockey East and you hear about those big programs, but their main goal is just to come over here and play Division I hockey, and they're getting that opportunity in obviously what's an up and coming league, and with some of these teams that are finally investing kind of the amount of money and the resources to become equal to everyone else. So it's been fun to watch, and they've certainly, those two programs, obviously Bentley beat BC this year, and they're on an incredible unbeaten streak right now, again at the pretty important time of the season. So it's going to be fun to watch those two and watch kind of how that race shakes out, because it's the perfect time of kind of year to see a period of that. Obviously it looks like AIC has the upper hand at this point because of how far they've positioned themselves, but those two teams are and Bentley's on that run right now, but they're two teams that are playing there, playing some pretty consistent hockey right now, which is obviously important at this time of the year.
Yeah, it's I should note also that maybe part of the reason why AIC is doing as well as they are, they have a top-level scorer in Blake Christensen. He's tied for third with, here are the guys he's tied with, Odin Tufto and Evan Barrett. And he's only behind Joseph Duzak of Mercyhurst, who's a defender in Atlantic Hockey at Mercyhurst, and Taro Hirose, and he's at 37 points. Hirose, man, if Michigan State were a better hockey team, Hirose would be a much higher candidate for the Hobie Award, because he's having a great season. But he's playing for a mediocre team that is very, very much likely to miss the NCAA tournament unless they win out in the Big Ten. But yeah, it's really quite a remarkable performance for Christensen. 37 points, 13 goals, 24 assists. They're in kind of an interesting point in this season because they have played 26 Atlantic Hockey games. They have a 35-point total. That's 7 points higher than second place Bentley. That's 10 more than the Rochester Institute of Technology and Air Force, who are at 25 each, and 11 higher than the fifth place teams, who are Sacred Heart. Yes, that's Sacred Heart, and Mercyhurst. So it's a really interesting flip of the script where Sacred Heart and Bentley were near the bottom of the conference last year, and now they're real big time contenders, and they're bigger factors than you would expect. I'm sure that the tournament, which will be played in Buffalo at Canisius Rink, I think is where they're going to play that one.
Yep, so, at the Harbor. So.
Yeah, at the Harbor Rink. So that's going to be a fun tournament. I can't help but look at that matchup that they have with Arizona State and think, I don't see the Yellow Jackets winning this one just because ASU knows that they need every single game in a way that no one else does. Because nobody else has that kind of schedule, and no one else has the problem of Arizona State, which is they don't have a conference to lean into.
Right.
So what do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting because, like you said, it's a unique scenario, one that we in a long time, in the way that this tournament especially goes, because obviously they're up for an at-large bid, like you said, don't have a conference to rely on, and they've put themselves in an incredible position, but they, like everyone else, you need to keep winning, and they don't have a lot of opportunity outside of not having a conference. They're on the bubble, and they don't have quite the amount of opportunities as everyone else does. So it's really it's interesting. It's going to be fun to kind of follow that, because there's that potential for them to be moving a little bit as everyone else plays, and be a little bit indecisive about their future, but they're going to get to control it to the best that they can over the next few weeks here, because they don't have a lot of time left, like you said. And It'll be fun to watch. They only have after this, they have a week off and 2 games against another really big challenge for them in going to Minnesota. So it's going to be fun to see. And for AIC, I think they're going to go in there with a lot of pride because that's a really big opportunity for them and almost an opportunity to not only boost their own kind of stock because it's going to be a really good team that they're playing, but to kind of go in there with some pride and potentially you could almost call it be a spoiler because, again, only have after that Arizona State will only have 2 games left. So it's going to be fun and an interesting thing to watch over the next few weeks. But you got to win the games just like you said, and it'll be fun.
They have the Sun Devils have an opportunity to become the first independent team since the 1992 Alaska Anchorage Seawolves to make the NCAA tournament. They have an opportunity to be the first team since 1999 that as an independent to win 20 games. That year, the 98-99 season, the Chargers of Alabama Huntsville made the transition to Division I and looked like they were going to make it rather successfully. They ended up going 21-5, but they ended up on the outside looking in, partly because they lost 2 games against Niagara, which they lost both 1-goal games in which they both very well could have and should have won. In fact, they played 4 games against Niagara over their closing bits of the season, and they lost all of them. They win 1 or 2 of them, and they might be looking at a little bit of a different position, but they were playing a little bit of a funny schedule because it's Division I and Division. Like they had opponents like Elmira, Oswego, and Geneseo, so they were making the transition into being a full-time, full Division I team. So yeah, but that's the last time an independent school that played anything of a Division I schedule ended up winning 20 games. This would be the 3rd full season that the Sun Devils have been a D1 program, and look at the amazing progress that they have made already. It's really, really pretty remarkable what they've been able to accomplish as it is. Josh Kummins, thank you so much for coming on. Where are you going to be this weekend?
I will be for sure at the UMass BC game on Saturday. I think I still have a couple of actually Beanpot related things to finish up, so I'll probably be at the Vermont Northeastern game on Friday to obviously make it easier to handle that.
Cool. You can find him at Joshua Kummins on both Twitter and on Instagram. You can read all of his stuff at the New England Hockey Journal, and you write some stuff also for I think you write some stuff for the Baseball Journal as well. Is that correct?
That's right. That's funny. You messaged me to hop on, sent me the email to hop on minutes after I got off the phone planning for the baseball season with our editors because the Division I baseball season starts on Friday, believe it or not. So
yeah, pitchers
doesn't feel like that up here for us, but
pitchers and catchers have reported for Major League Spring Training. So
right.
So yeah, it is proper baseball season. You can find him at all those places. He's doing stuff for the North Shore Navigators of the one of the summer leagues up here. They play their games in Malden. I'm blanking in Lynn.
Very close.
Yeah, they play their games in Lynn. They play up on the North Shore. He'll be He'll be working for that team this summer. He is a good guy. follow him at his Twitter and Instagram spots at Joshua Kummins, Kummins. Joshua is like the dude from the Bible. Just, figure that one out. You can follow me on Twitter at cclynchwall. On Twitter, you can follow me on Instagram at cclynch16. This podcast has a recently created handle on both Twitter and Instagram at University Puck. I tried to get the other way around as the show title, but those handles were already taken, so I just went for what was available. You can find us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, Blog Talk Radio. Please, wherever you find this, give it a rating, give it a share, give it a shout out. We thank you so much for being interested in the goings-on in the college hockey world. Thank you so much for listening, for being supporters, being friends, being fans, being part of a continuing conversation about the sport that we care about and love so much. And in the words of the great Tim Williams, keep your head up, your hits clean, and congratulations to Northeastern University for winning another Beanpot championship.